Hi everybody, happy Derby Day. Got my hat out. It's a virtual Derby Day this year, but we still want to celebrate it. And because of that, I am going to do a quick reading from chapter 1 of my middle grade novel, Luck of the Draw. If you're not aware of this book from previous postings, it's for ages 8 to 12 and up. It's told from the horse's point of view, and it's told by a horse that's a really terrible racehorse. It's loosely based on the life of my horse, Puppy, was my first horse. And basically, the moral of the story is that you don't have to be a superstar to be good at something. So this horse is trying to do, racing. He ends up in the Kentucky Derby, which he would never in any fashion end up in the Kentucky Derby, but it's fiction. So he ends up in the Kentucky Derby. He does a whole bunch of other things in his life, and he kind of comes to the conclusion that maybe he's not good at certain things, but he's good at other things that you'll find out if you read the entire book. So I'm just going to read the first chapter of this book in honor of Derby Day, and then I will post the video, and if anyone has questions, you can just shout out. Chapter 1, Anything But a Legend. My career as a racehorse can be summed up in one word: pathetic. In a field of 5 horses, I'd finished 4th, and the odds were even worse in a larger race. It wasn't as if anyone thought I could do better, since I was the product of the 2 worst racehorses ever. My mother, Dixie, had a stunning one-race career in which she ended up dead last by nearly 30 lengths. Luckily, my mother had respectable bloodlines, good looks, and an excellent build. She was a stocky chestnut mare with long straight legs and a white stripe on her head that I inherited. When my mother turned 4, she was sold to a breeder who decided she'd make a decent broodmare. Not long afterwards, Heart of Gold, a young stallion, became her first mate. My mother once told me that my father had a knee injury and didn't have a very lengthy racing career either. However, he was tall, dark, and handsome, and remained his owner's favorite, despite his losing streak and lay up after his injury. I arrived some months later, with a short, fuzzy black coat covering my scrawny body. The first humans that I met were Jill, a blonde woman that I later learned was my owner, and her black-haired husband, Lucian. "Hiya, Lucky," she said, helping my mother to clean me off. "Welcome to the world." "Lucky, eh?" said Lucian. How'd you come up with this one?" "We need more names with L's, dear," Jill said, with a smile. "His registered name will be Luck of the Draw. I thought it'd be appropriate since we took a gamble foaling him in the first place." I spent almost a year in my mother's company. She was a very sweet mare, very caring and gentle, and convinced that she could teach me to run like a great racehorse. "If you practice galloping every day and try your best, someday you'll be faster than any other racehorse. I believe in you," my mother said one morning to me in the field as she nudged me to go race with the other colts. My mother must have been crazy to think that I ever had a chance to succeed, at least at racing. I'd run after the herd to try and please her, but I couldn't even keep up with the younger foals, who were even less sure of their legs. As the months went by, my black coat gradually lightened into a dark brown. I grew bigger and a bit faster. Soon the other colts began spending time away from their mothers more and would taunt me to come play with them. "Come on, Lucky," shouted one chestnut colt. "Catch us if you can." I was hesitant to leave my mother at first, but soon took off at a full gallop. Moving fast made the grass tickle my legs and dirt fly up at my tail. But when I looked ahead at the gang of other foals, I was still far behind. Day after day, the colts would challenge me to catch them, but I never could. After several failed attempts to catch up to the other colts, I decided it was easier to munch grass and watch the other horses race by. Some days I'd spend hours napping in the lush pasture, which made the farm handlers cringe. One warm afternoon, as I was walking through the field with my mother, I met my handler Freddie, a young brown-haired man with dark, kind eyes and sunburnt skin. My mother said he was too tall and skinny. "They must not be feeding him enough grain," she said. "How are you, Dixie?" said Freddie. "It's been a while since I've seen you, girl. This must be your Lucky. Nice to meet you, boy." Freddie reached out and rubbed my nose. I wasn't used to my face being touched, so I ran and hid behind my mother. "Lucky, stop. He won't hurt you," she said. "I didn't mean to scare you, boy," said Freddie with a laugh. "It's about time you get more used to being handled, though." Freddie got down on his knees and reached for me again. I listened for my mother and let him pat me. Before I knew it, Freddie had fastened a brown leather device called a halter on my face. I shook my head and pawed at the halter with my front hoof. It wouldn't come off. After some time, I forgot I was wearing it, except when my mother would grab it and lead me around the field, usually when I wasn't listening to her. I became accustomed to Freddie visiting me and my mother on a daily basis. Every afternoon he would lead my mother from the field, and I followed obediently. While I had my hooves picked out before and had trusted Freddie to do that, it took some time before I trusted him to brush me. He moved the brush over my body slowly, but it felt strange. I preferred to be groomed by my mother, who would just gently nibble on my coat, removing the dirt and lulling me to sleep. One sunny day, as Freddie was leading my mother and me, we spotted Jill coming out of the barn. "Oh, Lucky, you're getting to be such a tall, handsome horse." Jill stroked my long bay neck gently as she spoke. "If only you could keep some weight on. It's too bad. If you keep growing at this rate, you'll be too tall and skinny to win races. It's usually the compact, muscular horses that have the real speed." "But, ma'am, famous racehorses like Secretariat had lanky builds when they were colts, and look how they turned out," said Freddie with a laugh. "Secretariat was big and muscular," Jill stated. "He could maintain distance and hold faster speeds than the smaller horses. Lucky's such a scrawny little thing, no matter how much we feed him. Someday he'll be big and muscular, I'm sure, but I think he'll just continue to be so lanky until he's older. I'd be surprised if he wasn't close to 18 hands by age 2 and still a ribby boy." "But you're going to race him, aren't you, Mrs. Connolly?" asked Freddie. Jill smiled. "Of course. I mean, like, he could surprise us. Besides, we bred him to be a racehorse, so that's what he'll be, at least at first. If he doesn't cut it, I can probably find a trainer to get him jumping and sell him in that market." I listened, grazing near one of the barns. As Freddie spoke, he leaned over to push my forelock out of my eyes, not letting a single strand fall out of place. Freddie wanted me to become accustomed to standing on cross ties, which are the ropes that were on either side of my halter. He started to groom me and my mother in the barn. Sometimes my mother would stand still without a lead rope for Jill's twin daughters, Callie and Kelly, to groom at the same time. I had a hard time distinguishing the two of them because they were both small and thin with long brown ponytails. Both wore matching blue overalls. Callie and Kelly adored my mother, and she was extremely gentle with them, no matter if they braided her mane with purple flowers, or if they laughed and screamed while running around the barn. My mother was my role model. She always reminded me, "You're going to meet people in your life who are convinced that thoroughbreds are hot-tempered and spook at everything. No matter what happens to you, always go out of your way to prove them wrong. So many good horses can't help shine. They're green and they don't know any better. Sometimes a rough handler can make you skittish around humans too. Don't do that. You think before you act, and even if somebody pushes you too far, don't get flighty or mean-tempered." "I would never do that," I said. "You never know, Lucky," my mother replied. "I've seen plenty of good horses change their ways after a bad experience. Always obey your riders and handlers, and you'll get to live like a good life like I have. Remember what I've said." My mother's words didn't make sense at the time because I had never been put in a situation where I felt the need to resist. I wanted to please Freddie, Jill, and anyone else who worked with me. Even if I couldn't be the best racehorse in the world, they would simply love me for my sweet temperament and willingness to please, or so I thought. And that's chapter 1 of Luck of the Draw. Like I said, I wrote this 12 years ago. It's a middle grade book, so kids 8 to 12 and up. I've had people who are in their 90s read it and love it if they're horse lovers. And if anybody is interested in the book, you can go to my website, which is cayusecanyon.com. It's CAYUSE canyon.com. And it's available there. It's also available on Amazon.com. So if you prefer just to go on Amazon and order it there, you can. But if you order it from my website, I do sign all the books individually, and I can mail it for free in the U.S. So it's about the same thing. I'll just really quickly touch on my other books, and maybe I'll do another video of those at some point if anyone's interested. I've got My Desert Son, which is the book that I started writing when I was 12 years old. It's about a Mustang who is struggling to regain his freedom after being captured. I've got Spirit of the Saluda River, which is a easy reader, so that's more in the usually like 4 to 7, 5 to 8 range for kids. That one's fully illustrated, and that was actually illustrated by a 12-year-old girl who's very talented. And I have a video of that, reading that one. And I also have Janie's New Legs, which is my second book. So My Desert Son was my first book. Janie's New Legs is my second book. It's actually about a pony who was abused. And I always have a kind of a rescue thing with a lot of the stuff I do. Pony was abused that ends up being saved and used for a therapeutic riding center. And he meets a girl that's paralyzed, and that's their story. So that was my second book. And then Luck of the Draw is my third book. So if anyone has questions, you can always leave a comment. On YouTube, it might not allow you to leave comments it's for kids, but you can always find me on Facebook, Diana Torto, Tuorto, and here they are. And happy Derby Day for those of you watching it live on Derby Day. And have a great one. Thanks.